there, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Thursday, everyone. You probably noticed that I didn't end up having a video on Sunday. I just ran out of time with trying to get everything ready for my Galentine's event on Saturday, but it ended up turning out to be a really great event. It was pretty busy all day long. I ended up selling the little table that usually is behind me holding my lamp up. So I've got another one in my kitchen that I'm trying to get done for you guys for Sunday. So we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, for today's video, I did get a few thrift flips done. I love how they all came together. I hope you guys like them too. And without further ado, let's get to today's video. For my first project, I decided to go ahead and paint this pair of pillar holders that I picked up from Goodwill not too terribly long ago. Now, honestly, there's really nothing wrong with these, but I felt like I could bring out the detail in them a little bit more using some paint and some wax. For my paint, I decided I wanted a dark neutral to go over the dark candle holders. So I chose DIY's Weathered Wood, which is this really pretty grayish brown. Now, if you've never used DIY paint before, it is a relatively thick paint. So the one thing I am trying to do here while I'm going around these pillar holders is to be very cognizant of my brush strokes and making sure that I'm not leaving a bunch of gunky paint in any of the details on these pillar holders. I did end up going over each of the pillar holders with 2 good coats of that weathered wood paint, and you can see here how light it is when it dries as opposed to how dark it is when it's wet. Just keep in mind that when you seal it, it will end up somewhere in between. To seal these guys, I am starting with a coat of DIY's clear wax. And again, you can see how much darker this paint is just with the application of that clear wax. So I'm just brushing that on, making sure to get it down into all of the little nooks and crannies, and then very, very lightly and gently rubbing back any excess wax. Now comes the fun part. Once I'm finished with the clear wax on my pillar holders, I'm going to go over each of them with a good coat of DIY's white wax. Now you can see here I'm putting it on relatively thinly. I'm not gooping up the wax anywhere in particular. And once I have a nice even coat, I'm going in again very gently and wiping back any excess wax. This really lightens these up, and look how that detail just shines on these pillar holders now. And here's a little side by side to show you just what a difference that white wax makes. Once I had finished with the larger pillar holder, I moved on to do the same to the smaller pillar holder, just working that white wax down into all the details and then very, very lightly wiping back any excess wax. I think it's amazing what a difference just adding a coat of paint and some wax made on these pillar holders. I think they look so much better than they did, and I really hope you guys like them as much as I do. For my second project, I am making over a simple clay pot. Now, originally, this was not the project I had planned for today's video, but I ran into some serious issues with the original project, so I had to kind of switch gears. And when I went looking in my stash, I found this clay pot, and I thought it would be just kind of a good substitute for my original plan. So I am painting this little clay pot with 2 coats of the DIY cottage color called Crockery, which is this beautiful kind of taupey color. And I'm using the cottage color because it will dry very, very smooth. It has a built-in sealer, so I don't have to worry about sealing it. And I want to try one of the new H2O transfers, so I thought this would be a great base to start with. Now, full disclaimer, I am really new to H2O transfers, so I'm going to be keeping it really simple on this pot. I'm just going to be using this little flower. It's from the Poetry and Petals sheet, and I cut it out and peeled the clear sheet off, and then I misted the pot as per the directions. And then you can see the gray shows you where the transfer is. So I lined it up where I wanted it, and then I kind of rubbed it down a little bit, and then I misted that paper backing. This really seemed to help lay it down onto the pot a little bit better so that I could burnish it in with my fingers, just going over that paper backing very gently and misting it until it was not sopping wet, but at least good and damp. After about 3 minutes, I came back to remove that paper piece from the transfer. It was a really easy removal, except for a little piece of flour that didn't want to come off. And so I just used my finger to push that down into my pot. Once I had the transfer down, I did let it dry completely before going in to seal over it. For my sealer, I decided to use DIY's Big Top. And if you saw my last video, you saw that I used Decrepit Dust in Dark with liquid patina to age a piece. And I thought I would do that with this pot. However, for whatever reason, everywhere I met a brush stroke with another brush stroke, it would leave kind of this weird empty area where the decrepit dust didn't really want to stick. And so I ended up not liking it. So here I am wiping it all back off with a damp shop towel to get back to just the paint. I ended up taking a little bit of paint off around the rim, which I kind of liked. It looked a little bit distressed. So I just left that alone. And then I went over the entire pot with a coat of DIY's Big Top and called it good. I love how this came out. I enjoyed using the H2O transfer. I definitely need a little bit more practice with them, so I'm sure you'll be seeing them again in the future. For my third and final project, I'm going to be giving this cute little recipe box a makeover. This thing looks homemade, even though it is really well constructed. And I'm going to be putting some milk paint on it. And of course, it's always important that you start with a clean surface. So I am washing this little thing down with some crud cutter. And then once that's done, I am rinsing it with some clean water just to make sure I don't have any crud cutter residue left behind. Once it was completely clean and dry, I went ahead and removed the hinges. I didn't want to paint over them, so it was important that I take them off. Once I'd finally finished up all the prep work, it was time to start painting. For my paint, I'm using Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Birdie, which is this beautiful kind of bluish green. And since this little piece has kind of a vintage feel to it, I left the extra bond out of my paint in the hopes of getting a little bit of chippiness or some crackling. I ended up needing 3 coats of paint for full coverage, and you can see here what a huge difference it makes just going from that first coat to the second. Now at this point, I really didn't see a whole lot of chippiness or crackling in my paint. So for this second coat, I did go ahead and dry it with my hair dryer in the hopes that that heat would kind of accelerate that process. And I did end up with a little bit of chippiness after that. Once I was finished painting and everything was completely dry, I went ahead and grabbed some sandpaper to knock off any chips that had formed in my paint. You can see here, most of them ended up being right on the top of my little recipe box. And I'm going over it right now with some 220 grit sandpaper. I ended up trading that out for some 150 grit just to add a little bit of distressing to this piece in the areas where I didn't get the chippiness, just to kind of tie everything together. And as I went over the entire recipe box, I kind of switched out from the 150 to the 220. I really wanted a nice smooth surface when I was done, so I wanted to make sure and finish off everything with that 220 grit sandpaper. You can see here I also did get a little bit of chippiness on the lid as well. Once I was finished sanding, I took my little recipe box over to my sink and rinsed it off really well and then wiped it dry with a shop towel. Now keep in mind, if you get milk paint wet, it does increase the possibility that you'll end up with more chippiness. I did get a little bit more on top, but nothing too major. Now, I went over several possibilities of what to do with the front of this box, but in the end, I decided on a transfer. I had this last little piece of the transfer set called Rosette Royale left in my drawer, so I went ahead and cut off a chunk of it that would fit and then began to apply that to the front of the box. I laid it down and began rubbing it down with the transfer stick, and at first, I didn't have any issue. It went down pretty smoothly. Normally transfers do over milk paint, but in the areas where I was getting a little bit of chippiness, it did get a little fussy, and so I had to be really careful and go slow. And you can see I put my fingers underneath that vellum to kind of help push as I rub with the transfer stick to help kind of lay the transfer down with my fingers as I go. I did end up with a couple places where the transfer had kind of pulled the paint up just a little. So I went in with some DIY liquid patina and just used that like a decoupage medium. So I would lift up anywhere the transfer wasn't stuck down completely, put a little bit of that liquid patina down, and then just rub my transfer back down into the piece and basically glue it in place. Once I did that, then it was time to seal my entire piece. And since I had already gone over some parts of it with that liquid patina, I decided to go ahead and use the liquid patina to seal the entire box. Before I even started this project, I knew I wanted to change this little box's function from a recipe box to a seed storage box. And I wanted to put the word seeds on the lid of my box. So I'm using my stamp set by Redesign with Prima. This one's called Alpha. And I'm using the uppercase letters to stamp out the word seeds. Now the problem is when I got done, not only was my last S a little bit low, but I really decided it was too much black on the top of my lid. So here I go, sanding that right back off again so that I can start over. Thankfully, I had that coat of liquid patina down, so it came up pretty easily. I did end up going into the paint just a little bit, but not too bad. I felt like it just kind of added a touch more distressing to my piece. Then I resealed it with some more liquid patina and grabbed out the lowercase letters this time to spell out the word seeds. I put those on a piece of this backer board and then pressed them down into my paint. I'm using StazOn Black Ink for this. And once I had the SE and the D down, I just went back in with the E and then the S to finish up my word. And I really feel like this looks so much better. Once my ink was completely dry on my stamp, I went over it with another coat of that liquid patina just to make sure it was sealed really well. Then it was just a matter of reattaching my hardware to put my box back together again. Once I was finished with that, though, I had a little piece of that transfer left over, so I decided to cut it into two and just put a little bit of it on each side of the seeds for a little more decoration. In the end, I really love how this little box came together. I think it's so sweet, and I hope you guys like it as much as I do. Well, that is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my projects and I hope you enjoyed today's video. What did you think of the H2O transfer on the little pot? I know it was a very simple makeover. I just didn't want to go too crazy since I have not really practiced with the H2O transfers very much yet, but I really love the vibrant colors and they are pretty simple to put down, which is nice. I do have to confess, the project that I was working on before I ended up switching to the little pot, I had put a couple of the H2O transfers on it. The problem was, for whatever reason, it was a galvanized pail and my paint was bubbling up off of it. I have no idea why. So it's just something that I am either going to end up using personally or having to sand completely back down so that I can start over. So we'll see what I end up doing with it. But at any rate, I had had a little bit of practice with them before I put it on that clay pot. So they're definitely an interesting product that I am looking forward to using again. Anyway, that being said, if you did enjoy today's video, please please give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of today's projects. Just a quick reminder, I do carry a full range of DIY products here in my shop and on my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. I carry DIY paint and products as well as Sweet Pickins milk paint and products, and of course some recycled treasures decoupage papers and Redesign with Prima products. So check those out there if you're in need. And then of course for Sunday's video, I am already working on getting a replacement table for the one that was behind me here. So that will be ready hopefully for Sunday. So I'll see you back here then. Until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your week and beginning of the weekend. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. And I will see you back here on Sunday. Bye.